So fittingly, the last presentation to end the colloquium is called Quitting the Quest, a Remedy for Environmental Problems, and it will be delivered by Disha, Chhatbar, a doctoral student from the Department of English and Contemporary Literary Studies of Saurashtra University in India. We can't hear you, Disha.
Okay, I'm sorry. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the paper here. The paper is titled Quitting the Quest, a Remedy for Environmental Problems. It is about a novel by Amitav Ghosh, which is titled The Living Mountain. And it is called a fable by Amitav Ghosh. And generally, when we talk about fables, it deals with some moral purpose. And by the end of the novel also, there is some environmental moral that is taught to the readers. Amitav Ghosh is a novelist who deals with the theme of nature in his works, as can be seen in the works like The Hungry Tide, The Jungle Nama, and several other books, including The Living Mountain. Going back to the past can be seen as one of the important aspects that he deals with in his works, which is seen not just in the thematic concern of his text, but also the way the text is constructed. As can be seen in The Jungle Nama, the book is written in such a way that it is illuminated by the images, and more than words, sometimes just by looking at the images, the environmental concerns become clear. And as Amitav Ghosh has said in the afterword of the book, that with Jungle Nama, I knew from the start that I wanted to collaborate with an artist in order to create a book which, rather than being illustrated with images subordinated to words, would be illuminated, as was the case with many of the most beautiful pre-modern works. So going back to the pre-modern time is one of the aspects that Amitav Ghosh deals with. And it is also the similar aspect in the work The Living Mountain as well, because it also contains certain images in which the mountain is given the eyes, and it is also speaking something which shows that nature is not something non-human. It is something which has liveliness in it. And it is also something related to the aspect of darshan that is there in eco-spirituality, in which not just human being is beholding nature, but human beings are also looked back by the nature. So the idea of using the images to illustrate the concern of the text, which is something related to the pre-modern time, again shows the aspect of going back somewhere in the time where human beings had good connection with nature and they used to preserve it. Besides this, the words that are used in the text are also important, because he has coined certain words, like he is using the word anthropologia, which is the combination of the word anthropology and Gaia. Anthropology as is the science of humanity, and Gaia is the idea that that is related to the other goddess of all in the Greek. And the symbolic use of Gaia, when we talk about it in the context of eco-criticism, it is related to the consciousness that expresses a reverence for the planet as a living being who is home for all other living beings, all of whom share in and give form to her own original and dynamically changing life. So there is combination of these two words. Besides this, he has also named the rest that is important in the novel, which is named as anthropoi, which again shows the concern of the people with only the human race. The central event of the fable happens in the dream of Mansi, in the dream of Mansi, which she narrates to her friend, the anonymous narrator. As she mentions, it is the story set in the region of Himalaya, and it is about Mahaparbat, the great mountain. The people living here held a sacred view of nature, and the mountain was seen with reverence, and it was so much that they believed that mountain talked to them and answered their questions. The mountain protected them, and they followed its instruction of spreading the tale. The storytelling is important aspect here, and as we know that in the initial stage of the development of civilization, the tales were told orally, and it was passed from generation to generations. And in the story also, the storytelling is important. And people, after being colonized, they started forgetting their own tales. And at the end, they are lamenting over that, and they are also blaming the storytellers of the anthropoi, the race of anthropoi, who has colonized the aboriginal people of the land, who are the people who are living in Himalaya. They are also blaming the storytellers of the race of the anthropoi, who had forgotten, who could not see that the mountains are alive and the mountains could also speak. So it is all about the storytelling, how the story is being told, is how the perception of human beings in the world, the perception of the relation of human and nature, that is being constructed, and that is how our dealing with nature is also organized. And the problem in the storytelling itself can lead to the problem of having environmental issues because of not understanding our own place in the world. The natives showed respect to the mountain, which led them to respect the resources it provided, which further led to prevent the exploitation of it. Talking about Himalayan region, Ramchandra Guha has pointed out the importance of indigenous beliefs in preservation of nature in his book, The Unquiet Woods. As he writes, the dependence of hill peasant on forest resources was institutionalized through a variety of social and cultural mechanisms. Through religion, folklore, and tradition, the village communities had drawn a protective ring around the forest. Often, hilltops were dedicated to local deities, and the trees around the spot regarded with great respect. The similar is happening in the story as well, because the mountain is regarded as something sacred, and the people prohibited themselves from putting their foot even on the mountain. And because of that, the variety of things that are available there, which are rare in the world, is preserved. But as they are colonized by the anthropoi, the resources were exploited later on. The mountain was source for many rare things, and people protected it from the outsiders, but they were not cut off from the rest of the world. Every year there was a week's time in which the people would sell the things that are there in their region to the other people, but the outsiders were not allowed to enter their area, and the people who would go there to sell the things were the elder men and elder women. And once they would make it sure that everybody has left, they would come back, and then there would be the ceremony of gratitude. Now, this gratitude is important aspect in eco-spirituality because it connects you to the nature. And Satish Kumar has pointed out in his Soil, Soul and Society, the New Trinity for Our Time, in which it is said that whenever we do such ceremonies and whenever there are certain offerings to nature, it is related to the idea of yagna that is there in Hinduism, and it is actually a symbolic giving back to the nature whatever we have taken from it. Besides this, the writer also mentions the role played by women to protect nature, and it is related to the ecofeminist idea. Ecofeminist study of the relation of nature, culture, and man-women also identifies that women are closer to nature than men are, and it is pointed out by the article that is Prakriti and Shakti, an ecofeminist perspective, that the larger onus of protecting the environment and preserving the rich biodiversity lies on women's shoulder due to their being more sensitive and aware of the atrocities felt by Mother Earth. In the story, it is important for the people of the valley to sing the story of it to the other people and dance for it, which is done by women who are called adepts. The mountain communicates with them in the trance of their dance. It is an indigenous practice which is subjugated by the intruders later in the tale. It is also mentioned by Helen Tiffin that in the the Eastern religion had intrigued Europeans for several centuries, but several centuries, such fascination is also found in the anthropoi when they inquired about the mountain. But as is also mentioned, most uh, most well-intentioned missionaries, settlers, and administrators tended to conceive of themselves as conferring the gifts of civilization upon benighted heathen with little or no interest in receiving his or her philosophical gifts in return. And the similar thing also happens in the living mountain when they did not accept the knowledge and the wisdom of the indigenous people at first, but at the end there is reconciliation and they accepted that their beliefs were actually correct. The peace of the valley is threatened by the visitors who wanted to enter it and inquired about it. The name given to the race is again suggestive. The race is called anthropoi. Their scholars visited the valley in order to know about it, and here the knowledge became curse for the valley itself and became a reason for the colonization of it. The elder people did not allow them to enter, so they informed everything about the valley to the anthropoi, and they were relieved when they left. But they left with the alarming words, and what they said was, "I'm sure we will see each other again." But they did not appear for many years, and when they appeared, the mountain started trembling. And as it was mentioned, and as is said by the adept, that a cycle of time has ended and another one has begun, which is the cycle of tribulation. The history of intruders in Himalaya region is not a new phenomenon, but it goes back to the time of Aryan, and it is mentioned by the historians that no matter who colonized the Himalayan region, the rulers were more concerned with the gifts that it could provide and less concerned with the people and the ecology of the place. But at the end, there is certain subjugation, rebellions, and reconciliation happening time to time in every race that has colonized the land. But here, the account that Ghosh has provided has more similarities with the British rule in India. As is said in the text, the people who attacked the mountain were less in number than the people who were living there. And that reminds one of the Battle of Plassey, in which the number of British army was only 3,000, while the number of the soldiers in Nawab's place was more than 50,000. The Aboriginal people did not have the idea of the ownership of the land, and because they did not own the land, it became very natural for the Britishers to have the ownership of that land. And the similar is happening in the living mountain as well. And as Amitav Ghosh has written, since we were not making the use of the mountain's riches, they were fully justified in seizing them and taking whatever they wished. And they subjugated the natives and their belief system to colonize their land. Anthropoi also established their own system to rule the land. They appointed the soldiers to watch over the people of the valley who were ferocious, and there was clear divide between the natives and the anthropoi that replaced the native system of knowledge and administration. No more elder men and elder women held their place, and they were replaced by the chosen men by anthropoi. This made the people of the valley afraid of their own people. Later, the adepts were also imprisoned, and with this, there is the end of the connection between nature and the civilization that is there, because it was through the adept that they could communicate with nature, they could communicate with the mountain. And it is also realized by the speaker in the story that when the adepts were imprisoned, the land was in the hand of the people who knew the mountain the least. Then when the anthropoi started the exploitation of the land, there were other people who were helping them to climb the mountain, and listening to their stories, the people also had the desire to climb the peak of the mountain. And because of this, they also had fight among themselves, which uh, which also created the bloodshed. And as it is mentioned in the story, when it at, at some point it reached to the point where they actually destroyed the mountain and themselves more than the anthropoi had done till now. And the destruction of the land is also done by the anthropoi while they were climbing the mountain. And Amitav Ghosh points out that when the Aboriginal people started climbing, the climb was much harder now because the anthropoi had dirtied the slopes and covered them with trash. So there is also the trash that is being created. In the ascent too, there is certain hierarchy that is mentioned. The people toiling in the bottom are asked to work more in order to be able to climb the mountain someday. The Aboriginal people who started climbing the mountain with the fast pace is stands for the developing country who are developing so fast, but they are also time and again guided by the developed countries who are actually more responsible for which is actually um, um, I'm sorry. The people who are the Aboriginal people who are climbing the mountain actually stands for the developing country who are growing fast, but they are frequently guided by the developed countries who are actually more responsible for the destruction of the land and using more resources it provides. But in the story also there is a kind of reconciliation that happens in the end, and there is disillusionment about the narrative of anthropocentrism, which is believed to lead towards the development. And people could realize that it is just the development which is something material, and at the end we are destroying the nature, which is realized not just by the anthropoi but also by the Aboriginal people. In the end of the tale, the anthropoi accepts that the belief of the natives were correct, and they asks them to repeat their tale to enlighten them. They also end the quest that had begun and finds rescue in the wisdom of the adept, whom they request to dance, and when they could feel the response of the mountain to it, the seven were surprised and they said, "You were right. The mountain is alive. This means we must look after the poor dear mountain. We must tend to it. We must care for it." The proclamation, as this again reveals the anthropocentric point of view, in which they find it essential to protect the nature instead of realizing that nature has power to sustain even without the presence and efforts of human beings. To this, the response of the adept again shows the indigenous belief in the superiority of nature as against the fragility of humans. The adept exclaims, "How dare you? How dare you speak of the mountain as though you were its master, and it were your plaything, your child? Have you not understood anything of what it has been trying to teach you? Nothing at all." It is an outburst to make the anthropoi learn the lesson. And with this, Amitav Ghosh ends his fable with the moral lesson to learn from the current condition of environmental destruction, to listen what nature is telling, and to comprehend correctly the relation of human and nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions? Okay, so since there are no questions, again, I would like to thank all our participants in this colloquium in all the 3 days for the interesting and insightful comments and lectures that they provided. And hopefully we may meet with some of you in the future in next colloquium. So Thank you very much, and goodbye.